Hey, have you ever wondered, like, how do I know how many carbohydrates I'm supposed to have in a meal, or how much fat, or how much protein? If this all seems really confusing and you just want to know a simple step-by-step plan of exactly how to portion out your meals in order to reach your goals, you are in the right place. We're talking today all about knowing the exact proportions of what to put on your plate so that you get your goals. If we haven't met before, I'd like to say hello. My name is Tanessa Shears. I work with women to help them drop their last 10 pounds in a way that is not only fun, but sustainable, and about incorporating whole foods that make you feel confident and good, and that you know you're doing something good for your body by fueling yourself. So I'm really glad that you've taken the time today. Let's jump right in. So I want to first start off by saying that yes, the portions of what you put on your plate is super important, but there's going to be something that's more important than everything that has to do with that, and that is to do with whole food nutrition. So whole food nutrition just basically means you're looking at your plate and you're saying, out of the amount of things on my plate, how much of it is human-made and how much of it is nature-made. So something that is human-made might be something like pasta or bread or macaroni or linguine or tortellini or something like that. You know what I mean? Something that doesn't look like it did when it originally came from the earth. Now, something that's nature-made might be something like an egg or fish or fruit or vegetables or nuts or seeds. So when we're looking at our plate, more than anything else, we want to know that our plate is full of things that are made by nature. And the reason for this is because when they get inside of your body, they actually help to keep your hormones balanced so that you can burn fat much more effectively. And I can go into that on a whole nother video, but you want to first say, is my plate representative of a whole food diet? This is super important that we want to talk about. And how I gauge my 90% rule, because I like to say that, you know, there is room in life for enjoying food that isn't whole foods or nature made, that those are your refined and your processed foods. But how do I allot for that? Well, I say that 90% of my foods are whole foods. So if you're looking at, on average, you have 3 meals a day over 7 days in a week, that's 21 opportunities to have a whole food plan. So I find that if I can keep 2 or fewer of those meals with a processed or refined source of food in them, then I'm doing great. So that's what I like to aim for. 2 or fewer meals a week that contain a processed or refined food. So that's anything that doesn't look like what it looked like when it originally came from the ground. But I know you also want to know about, what the heck do I know what to put on my plate? So, okay, so we're doing whole foods. Well, what I like to introduce, and this is a trick I use with my clients, is it's a really simple way to help you gauge portion sizes. So let's start there. I like to use my hands for a couple reasons to help me portion size. The reason for this is that they're portable and you can take them with you anywhere, and they're also portioned out relative to the size of the person. So a smaller person has smaller hands and therefore needs smaller portions, but a larger person needs more food, so they're going to have larger hands. So this actually works quite well. So on average, the portion size system that I like to use is, I like to say, a serving of fat is the size of your thumb, a serving of protein is the size of your palm, a serving of starchy carbohydrates is the size of your cupped hands. So starchy carbohydrates include things like rice and potatoes and quinoa and beans. So those fit in your hand. And then a fist is the size of vegetables or fruit. I actually would put in the starchy carbs, but fistfuls of vegetables. So that's where I like to start. So let's review that really quick. All right, you have a thumb of fat, a palm of protein, a cupped handful of starchy carbs, and a fistful of vegetables. So now when we start to break it down, we look at the 3 groups of main macronutrients. And if that word is new to you, macronutrients just means the composition of what we eat. So things can break down into carbohydrates, into fats, and proteins, and different foods have different amounts of carbs, fats, and proteins in, but generally they'll fall under one primarily. So we're just going to be, for the sake of argument today, assuming that they'll fall under one to make it easier. So when I'm looking at a basic meal, so I'm talking about, let's just go on your average day, average meal. Here is what I like to look for when I'm putting things on my plate. I like to have a minimum of 3 to 4 fist-sized servings of vegetables on my plate every single day. And to be quite honest, I actually shoot for 5 to 6 because I love really, really big salads. They're like one of my favorite things to eat. But I look for, with my clients, 3 to 4 fist sizes of vegetables. We're trying to get at least 2 colors in there, all right? So that's what you start. I like to make sure that half of our plate or half of our bowl always starts filled with vegetables, because we want to think about the stuff we want to add in, not the stuff we want to take out. So once you've started there, you've got your vegetables on your plate, I then want you to consider having 1 to 2 palms of protein on your plate. So if you have a palm size here, and on average, let's just take this as an average thickness, 1 to 2 palms of protein per meal. I like to stick closer to the one side of things and spread it out through the day instead of having larger amounts in certain meals. So 1 to 2 pounds of protein. I then like to aim for 2 to 3 thumbs of fat. So if you're saying to me what the heck is considered a fat, think of things like cheese, think of things like olive oil, think of things like oily dressings, think of things like avocados and olives and nuts and seeds, and eggs have plenty of great fat, and fatty fish. So all of these things are great sources of fat that I like to make sure that I'm including. I mean, all of my salads usually have cheese in them. They have usually it's feta cheese, or they'll have a lot of avocado. I'll have an oil-based dressing, and I will always have nuts and seeds. So that's why I'm making sure I'm getting a full profile. So when I look at my plate, I've got my 3 to 4 fists of vegetables, my 1 to 2 palms of protein, and my 2 to 3 thumbs of fat. So this is a general guideline. Remember how I said it was a general meal? Now I do change it up between meals. So I don't always say, well, this is what my plate looks like every meal. So for example, in my first meal of the day, which is my breakfast, I actually do mostly fats and proteins at breakfast, and I like to keep my carbohydrates to the minimum with the exception of leafy greens and vegetables. So these rules don't apply so much to vegetables. But I like to make sure that there are no starchy carbs, no refined or processed foods in my breakfast, because what it does is it actually spikes up a hormone called insulin, and when insulin is high in the body, you are in fat storing mode. So I like to prolong my nighttime fasting hormone profile as long as I can. So I keep carbohydrates out of breakfast completely. And that's something that has worked exceptionally well for me, and I've stuck to it. It also gives me a clear head throughout the day, and I feel energized all the way through the day. I don't hit that mid-morning slump. It's worked really, really well. For my second meal of the day, which is lunch usually happens for me between 12 and 3, maybe even a little closer to 3, and this is the meal of the day. If I'm gonna have quinoa, rice, or potatoes, it's gonna go in this meal. My starchy carbs I like to get in the mid-afternoon. This also helps to optimize our hormone balance so that we're staying in fat burning mode for as long as we can. Now I like to limit it to half, maximum to 1 cupped handful of starchy carbohydrates, all right? So half to 1 cupped handful of starchy carbohydrates. Then what I do is at dinner time, I remove the starchy carbohydrates again for the most part. I mean, there are some days where if I want to do half a cup at lunch, half a cup at dinner, I will definitely do that, but I always make sure that I don't do it in the morning. One of the other things I like to note is that if you're looking at your plate on a general day, I like to include my starchy carbohydrates, my rice, my quinoa, and my potatoes on the days when I work out. This is because your muscle, it also helps you to store some of the energy from those foods so they don't always get stored as body fat. So I will talk about that all in another video, but just know that the days that you exercise are your optimal days to eat carbohydrates, because that helps to fill the muscle back up with energy instead of storing it in body fat. So on the whole, I keep no carbohydrates at breakfast, half to 1 cup hand at lunch on days I work out, and half cup at dinner on the days I work out. So having said that, I'm going to go over really quickly the 3 common mistakes that I see women make all the time when it comes to knowing whether to eat carbs, fats, or proteins in our meals. Number 1 is that you have carbohydrates in the morning, and a bunch of them. And I mean, I want to tell you right now, carbohydrates are great because vegetables are carbohydrates. But there are ones that are make it harder to burn fat, and there are ones that are easier to make it burn fat. So when we start off with a fruit smoothie and oatmeal for breakfast, that's 90% carbohydrates, and what that is doing is that is pulling you out of fat burning mode. So I like to say, how can I get protein, healthy fats, and even some vegetables in the morning and save my carbohydrates until the afternoon? The second is that I see sometimes women go way too high protein with their diet. So here's the thing. If you eat too much protein, it is converted into sugar in the body and stored as fat. We don't have a storage site for protein. You can't just store some extra muscle or some extra proteins on the side like you can with sugar and fat. So what your body actually does is it converts it into sugar and stores it as fat for you if you eat too much of it. So that's why I like to stick to my 1 to 2 pounds of protein guideline. The last mistake I made is I see fat phobia. What that means is the words 0 fat and low fat have been your best friend. I want to encourage you to consider that there are so many sources of healthy fats which not only help you keep fuller longer, but helps you feel more energized and awake, and you don't have to eat every 1 to 2 hours. These are things like nuts and seeds and eggs and avocados and oils on your dressings. So don't fear fat. The type of fat you want to fear is the trans fats and the fats that are found in the refined and processed foods. Remember those human-made food we talked about at the beginning? Those are the type of fats you want to avoid. So when you are at the grocery store, skip out on the zero and low-fat foods and then instead invest in fats that are going to support your brain health, your heart health, keep you fuller longer, and help keep your appetite satisfied throughout the day. I hope that has been really helpful for you. Comment below and let me know, what does your average meal look like? What was the best tip you took from today? Was it the serving size thing, or was it what the average plate should look like? If this has also been something that you're like, I really like this, I would love for you to download my No BS guide to a total diet makeover. It's a free guide that I made, and inside there's a 9-point checklist I go through when I make sure that I'm eating the right foods and in the right amount. So if you want kind of like a paper version of this and a more detailed version of the questions I ask myself, you can head to TanessaShears.com/diet-makeover and just give me your name and your email and I'll send it right to your inbox. It's completely free. I'll drop the link in the comments below so that you can have access to that, so that you can know exactly what you need to be eating to reach your goals. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget, tag a friend below if this is something that could help someone you know, and hit like to let me know that this is content that is important to you. I hope you have a brilliant week, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.